Resident Evil 4, one of the most well-known games across the gaming industry. A game that revolutionized third-person shooters and action games as a whole back in 2005. Fast forward to 2023, Capcom has remade this classic game from the ground up, giving it a similar treatment that Resident Evil 2 and 3 have gotten in recent years. Admittedly, I was a little skeptical about Capcom remaking this game for a couple of reasons. The main reason was while the RE2 remake was absolutely amazing, and I even consider it one of the best games in the series, the RE3 remake was lacking to say the least. It cut out a significant amount of content from the original game, and overall felt like an overpriced DLC more than it felt like a full game. My other reason is that RE4 is still mostly playable by today's standards, unless you're someone who can't get over the fact that you can move while shooting. Look, I still find this game extremely fun, clunkiness and all, but that's besides the point. Resident Evil 2 and 3 were also both PS1 games with fixed cameras and tank controls, which in turn made them much more in need of a remake. Not to mention how those two games were not readily available on modern hardware, whereas Resident Evil 4 has been ported to every system imaginable. It's actually kind of insane, but this also means that RE4 was still playable on the current systems. However, I feel as if Capcom knew about the concerns surrounding this game and handed the game over to the devs of the RE2 remake to let them perform their magic once again, as screwing up RE4 remake would be the equivalent of Square Enix messing up the Final Fantasy VII remake, as both games hold a similar status of being regarded as classics for their respective genres. So the real question that I'll be answering in this video is, was Capcom able to recapture the magic of Resident Evil 4 in this remake? I think the best way to describe what Capcom did with the RE4 remake is that the devs have revamped the entire game to be improved and modernized for the modern audience. They took what was already great about the original, brought it over to the remake, and then proceeded to look at every aspect of the original game that was either outdated or just outright bad, and said, alright, let's make this better. And my god, is this game beautiful. And I'm not just talking about the graphics, which, yeah, the devs are getting a little too good with the RE engine. This game looks visually incredible. Also, the updated designs for all of these characters look stellar. But something that was vastly improved was the narrative. The story of the remake plays out mostly the same as the originals, but this time around, the story actually makes sense. If you play the original RE4, you will quickly realize how absolutely ludicrous the story is. However, while the remake doesn't straight up change the story, it now tells it in a way that is much easier to follow. The remake also cuts back on a lot of the campiness of the original. It's still there in places for sure, but a lot of the funny dialogue you would find in a RE4 out of context video has been altered to better fit the darker atmosphere of this remake.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
Another reason for the narrative's improvement is how writing for the characters was improved. They still act the way they did in the original game, but they are all much more fleshed out, making them feel more like real people living through this chaotic situation. For example, Leon is still the action hero badass agent equipped with a knife, pistol, and sarcastic remarks, just like he was back in 2005. But now Leon is haunted by the Raccoon City outbreak that he lived through back in Resident Evil 2. He even carries around the knife that Marvin gave him before he turned. But the character that got the biggest upgrade in the remake was Luis. In the original game, he always felt like he didn't quite fit into the story well. However, in this remake, Luis gets much more screen time, and this allows us to get to know him more as a character. This new Luis has a proper backstory and goals, making him much more likable. Speaking of being more likable, Ashley is far less annoying in the remake. She still has her moments of being completely brain dead, but in my opinion, she is much more likable now. Also, the part where you get to play as her is actually really well done. It makes her feel, not useless. I'd also like to mention how Major Krauser is much better implemented into the remake story, as the remake does a much better job explaining who he is and what his connection with Leon is. I would also like to take time to shout out the voice acting in this game. In my opinion, everyone in this game has done an amazing job bringing these new versions of these characters to life. Well, actually, there is one exception. And no, I'm not talking about my guy Mr. Merchant here. His VA did a great job. It's just very hard to top this iconic voice.
What are you buying? What are you selling?
No, I'm referring to Ada Wong. Ada Wong is the only part of this remake that I feel is just a downgrade from the original. Now, not everything is bad about the new Ada. Her design looks pretty good, but I do wish they would let you unlock her 2005 outfit as a costume swap, but who knows, maybe they'll remake the Separate Ways story as DLC and include it then. However, the new voice acting and character overall in the game just doesn't feel right. Ada has no personality in this game, which I feel is mostly due to her voice acting. Like, she actually sounds almost robotic.
You can stop right there, Leon.
Put your hands where I can see them. Long time no see.
Fortunately, Ada isn't in the game very much, so this complaint is no deal breaker for me. Also, I want to point out that this is the only issue I have with this game. So to get back on the positives of this game, let's talk about the best part, the gameplay. The gameplay feels like a mixture of OG RE4s fused with the gameplay from the RE2 and 3 remakes. The remake takes the more action-oriented approach that the original had. Ammo in this game is much more available when compared to the last couple of remakes, where you would have to strategize each and every shot you would take on an enemy. Nah, in RE4, you just get to mow down enemies left and right, as this game at its core is an action game with horror elements sprinkled throughout it. In the original game, whenever you were aiming, you were unable to move, which is why the enemies were so forgiving and would typically attack one at a time. Well, unsurprisingly, they've added the ability to move and shoot in this remake. So what does that mean for the Ganado? While I would never say this game is scary personally, these enemies definitely got me stressing a couple of times and I was getting attacked from all angles. This game really makes you feel like you are getting attacked by an entire population. The enemies in this game are far more aggressive than they ever were in the original, and the AI is so much more advanced, meaning the enemies will actively change their plans of attack to catch you off guard. However, to counter the more advanced enemies, Leon now has new tricks up his sleeve. A quick swap bar has been added to the UI, so you no longer have to pause the action to go into a menu to swap weapons. On top of that, Leon can now crouch to sneak around to get a stealth kill, or duck under projectiles. But the main change in Leon's gameplay is how versatile his knife is now. In the original game, this thing was practically just a glorified box opener, but now Leon can use his knife to counter almost any attack, including chainsaws, or even use it to finish off a stunned enemy. The trade-off of this upgraded knife is that it now has a durability meter, meaning it needs to be repaired on occasion. To do this, you will have to visit the merchant. The merchant shop has gotten overhauled in this remake. He now doesn't only buy and sell weapons and items, but he will also take trades of spinos for certain items. During the spinos, the merchant now leaves around blue papers with side quests written on them. Yes, this game has side quests now. These quests can include anything from shooting blue medallions to killing a new boss. The merchant also owns this awesome shooting range now, where you can earn keychains to upgrade your attache case. Yep, there's a gacha mechanic too. Basically, what I'm getting at is the merchant has gotten a ton of new content that he brings to the game, adding so much more to his character. So after going over all of that, was Capcom able to recapture the magic of Resident Evil 4? In my opinion, not only did they recapture it, they reinvented it. These devs have somehow taken what was already one of the greatest games ever made, and made it better. From now on, whenever I look at or review any video game remake, I will have to compare its quality to this one, as I believe this is probably the greatest video game remake to date. This game is more than a one-to-one remake of a game. It is a reimagining that took what the original did and improved upon it, which is exactly what any remake should do. In my book, Resident Evil 4 Remake gets a 10 out of 10. So the real questions going forward with this game are, will they add Separate Ways as a DLC expansion, as Mercenaries is already confirmed? And can Resident Evil 4 be the first game in history to win Game of the Year in 2 different years? Well, that's a topic for another day. For now, let's just appreciate what a banger the Shooting Range song is.